Recall the task manager who was looking into contract processing time. Using a histogram, he determined that contract processing time varied from 16 to 65 days. But why did some contracts require more time than others? The task manager suspects that some kind of relationship exists between the variables that influence the contracting process. Perhaps processing time is related to the dollar value of the contract. Perhaps it is related to the time of year during which the contract is processed. A scatter diagram identifies possible relationships between variables. The task manager can use a scatter diagram to investigate relationships two at a time. He collects a little more data, so he has at least 50 data points. Some of the data points are the same. That is, some contracts required the same amount of time to process. So the chart will not necessarily show 50 separate data points. He then plots the data on a scatter diagram with the dollar value on the x-axis and the processing time on the y-axis. This is because he believes that processing time, a dependent variable, may change in some regular way as the dollar value, the independent variable, changes. The result is shown here. Notice that the data for each level of contract value are close together. The task manager could also draw a single line from left to right connecting all the data points. Data grouped together like this suggests a strong relationship between contract value and processing time. As the contract value increases, the processing time also increases in somewhat uniform way. The task manager may also suspect that processing time is related in some way to the time of year during which the contract is processed. Perhaps contracts take more time to process during traditional vacation periods when staffing levels might be reduced. So he collects the time of year data for the contract he's analyzing and prepares a scatter diagram with the month on the x-axis and processing time on the y-axis. This result is shown here. Now the data points are all over the diagram. There does not seem to be any grouping of data for each month, or any kind of regular pattern at all. This kind of grouping, or lack of grouping, suggests that no relationship exists between contract processing time and the time of year that the contract is processed. The rule of interpretation is simple. The closer the grouping, the more the data approximate a line, the stronger the relationship. The wider the grouping, the more the data are randomly scattered about the diagram, the weaker the relationship. The task manager must remember another rule of interpretation. Scatter diagrams are not predictive. They only disclose the relationship between data elements based on data that has been collected. They do not predict future relationships that go beyond the collected data.